So hello again to Preparing for Work, the series that helps you transition between university and the workplace. As you know, we've had lots of conversations recently with alumni, sharing their experiences of what it's like to work, and some of which are also hiring graduates and interns and sharing their experiences of that too. Today, we're really lucky to have David Ayeni with us. David, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you very much, Carla, and I'm really happy to have the opportunity to be here with you and the viewership. David Ayeni, I'm currently a director in a master systems integrator company that looks after the business for asset management and assets in the marketplace generally. So if we think about companies like HS2 or Shell or BP or national highways, we help them manage their assets in a more digital way and help them manage the supply chain that are working to revamp or develop new assets along the way. So I'm really happy to be here, like I said, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about what I've just said and how we're, as you mentioned earlier, hiring into our workplace and the industry.
Thank you so much, David. And just to say also that you're an alum of Chem Eng as well, so chemical engineering.
Yes, for my sins, I am an alum of chemical engineering, and I mentioned a few companies and asset owners that are in that industry, like BP and Shell. But luckily, I've had a career that I haven't just stuck in that world. I'm actually lucky that I work in multiple sectors now: manufacturing, mining, transportation, mobility, and the natural environment. So yes.
Wow, amazing. And so talking about sort of graduates and interns, what do you think you would like to see in terms of traits and skills of graduates coming into your organization?
That's a good question. And I was actually at an event, a sort of getting ready for work event at UCL last month. And I'll try and stay consistent. I think for me, when I hire graduates, I like to see that they're presenting themselves in the most professional way and that they're ready for work. And what do I mean by that? I mean, graduates that know that they've got skills to offer and at the same time are not over emphasizing skills, because let's be honest, if there's a fine line between arrogance and confidence, right? So if I see a graduate, there's lots of eyes, I did this, I did that. While the norm, I guess, and the convention is employers want to see that you've had experience. But let's face it, graduates are just first time in industry in most places, even if you're a postgrad. So I like to see graduates that are members of a team that, appreciate being good members of a solid team where they can collaborate, where they can express their ideas, and that will come across in a resume or CV to me, rather than over-exaggerating skills, experience, because guess what? You're still an entry-level employee, right, an aspiring professional. So that's the first thing for me. The second thing for me is always have a cover letter. So when the resume comes in, summarize, why it is you're looking for a job and give more context about, yourself. And then obviously then hopefully the graduate gets the interview. So then also be able to put some context around how the experience you've had in your, your graduate role or your postgraduate role is transferable into the specific role you're hiring for. But again, back to what I said earlier, I think it's all about how will you work in a team environment, because it's not an individual sport working in the kind of environment that I'm responsible for. And my teams are very collaborative. So that, for me, that's the main thing. And then when they do get on board, I'm speaking about the journey now, application, onboarding, and then being successful as a graduate in the role is be hungry, okay?
Yes.
Come in and ask questions. And whenever someone asks you to do something, obviously don't say yes to everything, but be curious, yes, be hungry, and never say no. Say yes, and yes if, can you do this? Yes, and if I get the right amount of training, or if you give me more context. And for me, the key thing that even senior members, and I know I'm going on a little bit, but the key things that even senior members of staff failing is when they're asked to do something, yes, and yes, if, but also when would you like that deliverable back is perfect, because it sets expectations, right, on when you're going to get it back, and it also manages the workload. So those are a few tips from me, Carla, from that question. Sorry, long way to answer that question.
No, it is perfect, because actually we've done a video about sort of consultative behavior in graduates. So when you get a piece of work, it's not just about asking about the deadline, it's asking, have you seen this piece of work before? You know, what should it look like? Who's the ultimate audience? You know, what's the purpose of the document, etc. So you've just, you know, put it perfectly. Thank you so much. And I know graduates and interns sometimes struggle in the job that they're doing, and it's very difficult to raise your head above the parapet and say, sorry, I'm really, you know, trying really hard, but I don't know what to do and I don't know how to do it. Obviously, mistakes then happen. And whether it's, if you're happy to share, whether it's your own mistakes in your job or career, or, you know, you've seen other people make mistakes, it would be really nice if you could share a story that you know, you've seen a really good outcome come from it, you know, because graduates and interns often feel that, you know, once they've made a mistake, that's it, that they're just, you know, their career's ruined. To me, you know, having been a graduate development manager, you know, the whole point of being on a graduate program or being a graduate is to make those mistakes. So I just wondered if you had any sort of anything you could share about that.
I do, Carla, I do. And I will use myself just so everyone knows that irrespective of where you are in your career and wherever you are in leadership, everyone starts from somewhere.
Okay.
So I'll give an example. But before I give an example, what I will say is that, again, everyone makes mistakes. The best way to learn, unfortunately, is mistakes.
Yes.
And because I fortunately lead a group of talented people in our company, we work a lot in digital. So if you make mistakes in digital versus physical, it's also a little bit more forgiving. So it's, in some environments, it's okay to make mistakes in pixels, you know, digital, rather than you make mistake pouring concrete somewhere on a job site, and now you have to dig it all up, and that's, you know, multi-million-pound problem. So yeah, also be mindful that you're dropping bouncy balls as opposed to eggs, right? But in terms of where I've made a mistake in the past and learned from it is when I was a graduate and I worked in a contractor, I was responsible for building a cooling water network in a refinery. Okay, and it was quite a high-profile sort of project because it was moving a whole asset from one country, dismantling it, demolishing it, and moving it to another country to make more money. So what I did is I redesigned this cooling water network, and rather than ask all the questions that I needed to ask around, you know, what is the new environment looking like and how can we automate a lot of these things, I just dove straight in and built this cooling water network using all sorts of macros in Excel. And in the end, I went for it. It took about a week and a half to develop this network, this complex network. And when I handed it into my supervisor, the look in his face made me realize that if I had asked questions along the way, I would have prevented some major issues, such as, you know, this is very technical, but pressure drops across the system using the right coefficient factors, you know, making sure that I get the pressure from battery limit to battery limit, which is related to pressure drop. In the end, though, I learned from that mistake. One thing I did learn is, as you're delivering an outcome for stakeholders, as you mentioned before, constantly getting feedback. Right. Don't bake the cake completely before you ask, what flavor of cake do you want? Yes. Go back to the stakeholder. Have I got the right assumptions in place? Have I got the right parameters in place? If I had waited 3 days before I submitted it, I would have basically stopped the outcome, which was another 2 weeks of work, because it was a complex piece of work. But in the end, the good story around it was there wasn't a lot of technical debt, because what I'd done was logically a sound model, but the details inside it meant I needed 2 weeks more of refactoring to deliver the outcome. So I learned a lot from that experience, where yes, constant communication, constant feedback, and early feedback is better than
Right.
a week and a half model. But that's me. That's what happened with me. And since then, I must say, I don't think I've ever since then delivered something that was a substantial piece of work that I haven't iteratively seek feedback. Even though someone says this is what they want, sometimes there's, people don't know what they want until you show it to them. Steve Jobs said that. So you continuously get that stakeholder feedback and engagement and deliver something better. So that's what happened to me.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And it sort of rings true on so many levels. Also for me, I mean, obviously I didn't work on what you did, but no cooling towers in my life, but certainly it rings true in terms of the sorts of advice you're giving. So thank you very much. Just on that, in terms of feedback, what do you think has been the most useful piece of feedback that you've received in your career?
Honestly, be nice to people on your way up, because you're going to see them on your way down.
Right.
So when I was a graduate, I used to ask a lot of questions.
Yes.
And I was always surprised when the most senior people in the organization, shout out to Stoner Webster, Milton Keynes, by the way, a lot of senior members of staff would just take time and I'd make assumptions, ask a lot of questions, and they would take me under their wing and they would explain to me how things happened, and they weren't frustrated by my questions. And I would always ask the senior members why. Well, they'd tell me, listen, we were once a graduate ourselves, and we understand that even though we're in senior positions of responsibility, the thing is, as you grow up in your career, you'll understand that eventually, one day I might end up working for you, David, as I won't mention any names. So be nice to people on your way up, even as a graduate, because when you get to a senior role, you never know who you're going to see on your way down. Those graduates that you were teaching the ropes will eventually, it's a cycle of profession. Right. They will eventually be your boss, and be nice to them. And once you have and cultivate and understand that mindset, you can speak to anyone in an organization, whether a graduate, whether a middle manager, whether a senior manager, whether a CEO. If everyone has that mindset to be consistently nice, never take anything personal at work, right, I think that's the grounding that everyone should really understand in professional work.
That's great. Thank you so much. That's true. And just in terms of obviously graduates are, as you mentioned earlier, kind of early entrance into to the career ladder, if you like. So obviously they would benefit from champions and mentors. How do people go around finding that in an organization?
It's a good question. I've been fortunate that I've had organizations I've worked for had mentorship schemes. Oh. But I've also taken initiative, and I'll talk about both now. So when I started my career, I started off with a buddy. So, graduate, you come on usually with multiple graduates in a graduate scheme. Yes. You have buddies, but also I was assigned a mentor 2 years ahead of me, and then also a management mentor, someone in the management team who would champion your career. And that happened consistently through my career. I've always had companies that would have a mentorship scheme. And as I went through that, one of my mentors told me that, be nice to people on your way up because you see them on your way down. But then also you look at people and individuals in the company that you resonate, their styles resonate with you, and feel free to ask for informal mentorship, not just in the function or department you're in, but adjacent, because the best way to be a well-rounded employee for a company and to grow is to look at different perspectives and understand the business that you're in. So I've always asked for mentorship informally outside of my business, or asked HR for a different mentor after a certain period of time, because sometimes, people's styles change as you grow in your career. You outgrow mentors, unfortunately. Yes. And you never, the 360 mentorships have helped as well, where you reverse mentoring, you mentor others. So those are kind of some things that have helped me in my career. But never be shy to ask someone to be your mentor if you like the way they approach things and you admire just their style, because you never know, they might just say yes.
Thank you so much. And so in terms of, you mentioned you've had quite a good pattern to your career, so quite an interesting path. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about, how you think your industry will grow, and what skills graduates might need in that industry in the future.
Yeah, it's a good point. I won't be biased towards chemical engineers, but I will say that if you are working as a graduate, you're postgraduate or undergraduate, that degree will be your foundation. Sometimes it might not be the sector or environment you end up in, but the transferable skills will definitely form your foundation. Now, there are exceptions to that rule where you completely do something at tangent to the degree that you studied. But what I would say is that when graduates really embrace some degrees have project management as part of them. Some degrees have fundamentals of chemistry, chemical engineering, mathematics, literature. All of these elements, timekeeping, add to what will make you a solid professional in your career. So what I would say is coursework, all of the difficult things that graduates face, elements of those come up in your workplace. So again, just embrace it. And when you're applying to jobs, I would say apply to jobs where you see as a fit with what you're learning in your degree. Because if you only a few people are successful on a tangent.
Right. So
I think it's all about trying to marry what you're doing with how you see yourself in 2, 3, 5 years time, which again, mentors will help. A graduate today would have started their life as a student 3 or 4 years prior. So why not have mentors that are, when you start in year 1, mentors in university in year 4? So you understand what they've done to prepare themselves while in uni, so that, as they try and enter the workforce, they're prepared for it. For example, have you done internships? Have you volunteered? Have you looked at the best companies for your type of degree? These things help you, because not only is it allowing you to make the best and transfer your skills, you're preparing yourself for what that 2, 3, 5 year journey might look like. And I think it's all part and power for the course.
Thank you so much. That has been such an interesting chat we've had with you. Thank you so much for your time. I know you're really, really busy and you've got to rush off now, but I just want to thank you. And obviously, guys at home, if you are interested in learning any more about preparing for work, the series is available on the UCL Engineering website, shortly on UCL Careers as well, on the YouTube channels. But thank you again, David. I really, really appreciate your time.
No worries, and I apologize for the distraction in the background of being pinged, but no, I really enjoy these things. And Carla, you've been amazing as a host. Thank you.
Thank you so much.